Of course, we're really enthused about Eileen, and I think the compliment here is tremendous with a couple of guys coming down from St. Paul, Dick Dury and Dan Klaus, old friends and neighbors. Eileen, of course, could be identified with how she's treated by her children. And they are all marvelous to her. And it shows that they're loving her almost as much as we love her. There's one problem with Eileen.
Just one? Just one.
That's all I'm going to tell. And I've kept this secret for over 75, probably 80 years. So, and I've never told a single person or a married one. But Eileen, with all of her discretion and all of her loyalty, she told me my first dirty joke. And it was so good, I haven't forgotten it. This is the way it went. Jake distributed vegetables door to door. And he had a wagon on which he rode to carry his vegetables. And the wagon was drawn by his trusty horse, Napoleon. So he goes up to this house, Mrs. Jones, I've got some peas. Oh, she says, I haven't had a pea in a week. He rushes out to his wagon, hits the reins and says, giddy up, Napoleon, there's gonna be a flood. He told me that 80 years.
Me too.
Can we have your attention, please?
That wasn't loud when you said that.
Can you hear me in the back row? My father's name, as most of you know, was John Robert Foley, known to his close friends as J.R. or John R.
Mary, hold
He was
on.
born in 1890 and was raised on a farm near Barrie, Minnesota, west of Morris. Okay. It so happened that the Catholic Archdiocese, or Archbishop Ireland, I'm reading this without my glasses, but it's pretty and was trying to recruit young men to go to the seminary to become priests. So young J.R., a mere 12 years old, and his older brother Dan were sent by train to St. Paul to be educated to become priests. The Lord worked in strange ways. He got those two brothers off the farm, and it's hard work, improved their education, but somehow they didn't have the call to the priesthood. So John R. and his brother Dan eventually enrolled in law school and became attorneys. I was looking for my fact checker here.
Yeah, where'd he go?
Right behind you.
What, you want me to confirm another lie?
So John, if you find any misstatements here, then correct.
If in doubt, make it up.
So John R. and his brother Dan eventually enrolled in law school and became attorneys. So young John R. now had a law degree and did not know where he'd open an office. It so happened that John R. was on a train to somewhere, and his seatmate on the train was a young talkative man who was a resident of Wabasha. He extolled the advantage of living in that small town along the mighty Mississippi. The majestic bluffs, the churches, the schools, the library, and the Anderson Hotel, which was the longest operating hotel in Minnesota. So I have to, okay. Young John R. became smitten with the town of Wabasha and set up shop as a lawyer in Wabasha. I'm looking for the year now. Was it 1915, Pat? That Pat?
14.
1914.
Oh, 14. Okay. Now, we are going to leave Minnesota briefly to zoom over the Midwest and land in a small coal mining town in Centralia, Pennsylvania. That's where Robert Brennan and his 5 children lived. He had been born in Minnesota, but had moved on to Pennsylvania for work. And his wife had died at the age of 49, so Grandpa Brennan and his eldest daughter, Ellen, known as Nellie, had become a teacher. And they took care of the 4 younger siblings. So you can imagine her excitement when she received an invitation to the wedding of her cousin Julia Brennan in St. Paul, Minnesota. At that time, Minnesota was considered out west. And so, I don't know how long. Oh, you're down here? Okay. Okay. But anyway, she chose to attend that wedding in St. Paul to meet her fate. At that point, well, at that point, Minnesota was no alien to her. But by golly, Nellie got on that train for that long, long trip to Minnesota. And I've always admired her courage in facing the unknown, so to speak. Actually, it turned out that the train was taking her to what would be the beginning of the next chapter of the rest of her life. Because one of the ushers at her cousin Julia's wedding was a handsome, where is it? Got the wrong page here.
Yeah. Where's the teleprompter when you need one?
A handsome Irishman named John Arnold. Apparently, they hit it off. They corresponded for the next year after she'd gone back to
Mary.
Pennsylvania, and then they were married in St. Ignatius Catholic Church in Centralia. And after the wedding trip, the newlyweds settled in Wabasha and remained there the rest of their life. Now you see the house on the corner down there, 1 block south of the church, where they lived for so many years. They had 10 children, 6 sons and 4 daughters. And the baby born after me, died in our mother's arms at 9 weeks, but his memory has been kept alive over 4 years.
4 years?
Over many years.
And then we
Four
told
of
her.
my siblings have followed Francis. Well, now all this information I just gave you is beyond your need to know. But I think it is so romantic. All my parents met east and west, and they formed quite a merger. And here we are today because of it. Okay, so these are the ones of the 10 children who have followed Francis into the golf course up there.
Okay, you're doing great.
My sister Mary, the oldest sibling, and then her daughter Patricia, Mary Pat is here today, passed on.
Where's Mary Pat? Right there. Oh, there she is.
She's waving her hand. Passed on several months after her 90th birthday, knock on wood. Due to an infection after gallbladder surgery. Her children are John, Mary Pat, who is here, Barb, Eileen, Peggy, and Susie, who is deceased. Then our brother Jack, who lived in Kensington, Maryland. Incidentally, 4 of my 5 brothers all became lawyers, so I'm not going to repeat that. Our brother, served as a congressman for 1 term in Maryland. He was an enthusiast in the history of the Old West and would take his children on trips out there to try to encourage their interest in the Old West. His wife Lucy had died several years earlier than Jack, and their children are Jack, Connie, Marie, and okay. Okay.
You want any more?
You must be well aware of our brother Dan. He was also a lawyer. Well, I wasn't going to mention that again. And practiced for several years with our father. He was
Don't
the
go off
first
script now.
man from Minnesota to be elected national commander of the American Legion. Just several months, in 1963, just several months before President Kennedy was assassinated. There's a great picture of Dan on the wall in the local American Legion. So if you feel like having a drink later tonight, stop at the Legion and see a kindred some sort or other of you. Dan has been married to Ellen for almost 50 years. Now Kevin can tell me how many years, and they had 5 sons. Tom, Kevin, Patrick, who is deceased, and Rory. And Rory's here. And Dan and Kevin. Okay.
Oh, Kevin.
Yeah. He's back.
That's all right, I got next.
Their mother Ellen had died in the early 1990s, so Dan was a widower for several years. And then, on August 4th, 2002, Dan married Jane Burke, the widow of William Burke, who had also been an American Legion national commander. They had a splendid wedding in San Francisco. They then began a cross-country drive for the National Convention of the American Legion in North Carolina. As fate would have it, they made a stop in Nashville to break up the trip and were planning on seeing the Grand Ole Opry. Dan had a medical condition for which he had the necessary medicine with him. But when he awakened on Saturday morning in Nashville, he had a sharp pain in his right, went to the bathroom to get his medicine, but when she returned, Dan had already died. It was devastating. He lived in his house here in Minnesota then for almost a year, sorting through his stuff and everything, and then moved back to California. And she had 5 children and her 2 daughters, Sharon and Susie Burke, I'm sure you know.
There's one of them, Marcy. She's back there. There she is.
Susie's behind me. There she is. Good. Okay. Now, for us, our sister Rose was our most recent loss. When she was in her teens, she had rheumatic fever. This seemed to make her susceptible to other ailments over the course of her life. But this did not stop Rose from achieving a master's degree in special education. She always had a very positive outlook, regardless of the health problems she was having. And their children are Maureen, James, Michael, and David. And Maureen is here, and David is here.
And Michael.
Yeah. Bob and his wife, Bob and Margie, right here, married for 75 years. You've been married for 75 years.
All right, we're almost done.
All right, yeah, we're almost done. Okay, I can hurry it up. Incidentally, his wife Margie has the same birthday as mine, the same birth date, but she's 5 years older than I am.
What's she doing?
We try to get out.
Wait.
That's sort of what Ricky for young. Their children are Michael, James, Pete, Dick. Yep, Dick is here, Carol is here, and Patrick. Another sibling, Catherine, also known as Cat, moved about a year ago from her residence in Silver Spring, Maryland, and to a facility in Woodbury because of health problems. And she was here earlier today. She came down for lunch at the golf course, and then she had to go back for granddaughter's graduation party or something. She has her master's in chemistry, and she and her husband Steve have 6 children. Kim, John, Kathy, Mary, Eileen, and Kevin. Well, Kathy brought her down today, so she was here.
And Mary Carroll was here too.
Mary Carroll was here. Oh yeah, Mary Carroll, yeah. Okay. Our brother Eugene, who had been, we're almost down to the end, so hang on here. Our brother Eugene, who had been appointed head of the Small Business Administration and had retired to Whitefish, Montana, where several of his family members live here, and his wife Franny is here today, and Paul, and Bob.
Where's Franny?
And Ann and Margaret is here, and Ann is working in Martha's Vineyard. So, our brother Pat, right here, you've heard of him today.
We've heard of him today.
Where he is still working as a federal judge and administrative law judge. Is that right? Okay. He's right back there. He has been kind enough to invite me in recent years to go to the opera in the Tampa Bay Performing Center. Had his 2 sons, Brandon and Justin, and they were both here today, and I'm so honored by everybody that showed up today. Now, we're down to me. Where's that last page?
I have it. You still have this.
Considering it's my birthday, and I've got it written here.
It's my party.
I'm recapping the highlights of my 90 years.
Yay!
Number 1, I survived the Great Depression. I didn't even know about it until I was older because we always had food, shelter, clothing, and we always celebrated birthdays and Christmas. And, so whatever sacrifices our parents made, it wasn't apparent to us. But I think it was my brother Jack that said he remembers seeing my dad wearing a shoe with a big hole in the sole, and he didn't want to spend the money to have it resold. So that's just sort of typical of what. Okay, now number 2. During my elementary school years, no, I didn't want that.
She doesn't want you to know that as a preschooler she played baby Jesus. I said.
She didn't say what.
Right. That he didn't make the cut to this. Okay, now, during my elementary school years at St. Felix, I had piano lessons for 7 years, violin lessons for 3 years, played the drum in the drum and bugle corps. Next page. All right. I won't tire you again.
You're not done with that page, Mom.
Well, I'm not.
Which your sister Kat.
All right. What drum major? The drum and bugle corps. I was also a cheerleader for 3 years for the St. Felix team, football and basketball. And it's amazing to me that they spend so much time teaching me piano and violin, and it took them so long to realize they had no talent. Number 3. I graduated from St. Felix in June 1941 and was a waitress during the summer at Douglas Lodge, Ideal Park. Then I became a freshman at St. Catherine's College in St. Paul.
I agree with that.
And my sister Kat was my roommate because she was a senior at the same. So that's where my close friends from St. James still call me sis
She was
because
a nice
they heard
looking
Kat
girl.
calling me sis. Tuition was $150. Now what are you laughing at?
He got a picture of you and he said, gosh, she was a nice looking girl.
$150 a year, or when I went to school, and I got my one worth out of it. But nowadays, it's $60,000 a year for tuition. I was a working scholarship student. And I still remember walking to my room after lunch on December 7th, 1940. 1941, and hearing on the radio that Pearl Harbor had been attacked by the Japanese. I thought, Pearl Harbor? What is it? Who is it? Where is it? You know? It turns out that my college class from 1941 to 1945 is the only class in the history of St. Catherine's College, now a university, whose entire college years were warriors. But here I am, okay, 4. During the 1945 summer, I was Wabasha County water safety instructor at the county beaches. In September of that year, I had a terrible cough, and Dr. Collins in Wabasha sent me directly to St. Elizabeth's Hospital. It was determined that overexposure to the sun so many hours a day as a swimming teacher had canceled the effects of the sulfur drugs that had been created for the armed forces. We're getting down there. And vitamin D, too much vitamin D from the sun, had canceled the medication that I needed. Finally, after 10 days in the hospital, a blood transfusion saved me. And aren't you glad? Number 5. On December 31, 1946, I married my high school sweetheart, Robert Paul Eaves II, known locally as Buster Eaves because he's a good football player. Okay. He had graduated from Wabasha High School in 1941, became a Marine, and then returned to Wabasha. He took advantage of the GI Bill and became a student at St. Thomas College in St. Paul. We were engaged to be married, and St. Thomas College was preparing Quonset huts on their campus for the married veterans as a temporary home while they were students. Around Thanksgiving in 1946, we were informed that a Quonset hut would be available for us January 1, 1947. Because of Christmas, we weren't able to get a wedding date until December 31, 1946, one day before we would be able to move in there. So when he graduated from I skipped a couple years. Our first 2 children, Paul and John, were born while we lived there on the St. Thomas campus. And when he graduated from St. Thomas, we moved to a 1-bedroom apartment at 2878 Holmes Avenue South in Minneapolis, where our 3rd child, Kathy, was born. So we outgrew that 1-bedroom apartment in a hurry, and we borrowed $2,500 from my dad for a down payment on a bungalow at 1778 Hague Avenue in St. Paul. And my husband became employed at International Harvester, and also eventually, we got another one? Okay. Last one. The end is in sight. He also got a part-time job at Bollinger Bakery, and the owner of the bakery lives right next door to us, and it was just a block away. And so we lived there 7 years, and moved again in 1959 to 1832 Agate Street, Maplewood. And during that time, Peter, Tricia, Michael, Bill, Mary, all right, were born at Hague Avenue. Not on Hague Avenue, but okay, then after we moved out where I'm living now, after 54 years, my youngest child, Kelly, was born. In the meantime, okay, we're up to number 6 here now. In the meantime, I had been employed full-time by Ramsey County Human Services for 20 years. My husband and I were divorced in 1972. Enough was enough. And the children and I moved forward on our own. I'm very proud of my children who are solid citizens, helpful, caring, responsible, and fun to be with. Number 7. When the children were pretty well raised, I started traveling to Ireland. I went there twice, and I went to the cottage that had been in the Foley family since 1800, and there was a a different bunch of kindreds through the years that have occupied that. So that was fun to see. Then I went to Spain once, and if you can imagine, one of the few regrets I have in this long life is that I majored in Spanish, because it didn't help me at all in raising the children. I majored in domestic science. Then I went to Peru because a young woman from Peru came up to live at, with Patricia and Stu to teach at St. Paul Academy, teach Spanish. And so then we went down the next summer to meet her family. And then Maru met the young Irishman, and we had to go down to Peru again for the wedding. You know,
So she's been to Machu Picchu twice.
How did I get Machu Picchu? So then after Peru, we went to Gibraltar, Mexico, Hawaii, Alaska. And I think my mother taking that long trip, right, to Minnesota, train ride, imbued my DNA with the love of travel. So, 9 decades on this planet has blessed me with 9 children, 15 grandchildren, 18 great-grandchildren, and their family members. I'm truly blessed and still enjoying good health, which makes all the difference. And in closing, what was I going to say in closing?
The end.
Okay, yes. Well, this has been so much fun for me, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I am. And you know what? It's just between you and me. It's like I'm getting a sneak preview to my own. Don't say it. Don't say it. Thank you very much for coming.
All right, buddy.